Okay, so let's say you have one indicator and you want to know when something like price is interacting with two different plots. So this is the Keltner channel. It has the upper line and lower line. And let's say we want to get a signal or get a signal condition when price crosses above the top line and below the bottom line. Those are two completely different plots in one indicator, and we can actually accomplish that with one solver. So when we bring up Bloodhound, a lot of newcomers, their first instinct to accomplish this is let's detect the top one with one solver, and let's detect the bottom one with a different solver. But actually we can do it with one. So let's play that out. So the idea that I mentioned is the crossover, when price crosses above the top line or bottom line. So crossover is the natural instinct. There's a couple solvers we can use for this, and we'll go over both. So crossover for input A. Usually input A is the faster moving, so we're going to choose price, which moves the fastest. So we're saying when the close price, that's input A, crosses input B, which we're going to go and select that Keltner channel. So Keltner, and make sure that the settings match what we added to the chart. Now here is the key thing. So a lot of people get confused by the checkboxes down here because they say, well, I can't uncheck this and I can check two different things, but why would I? So oftentimes people will say, okay, I'm not sure how that works, so I'm just going to dedicate this solver to a single plot and then worry about the other plot from another solver. But actually what we're doing here, we can expose both different plots or two different plots to the same solver. And they're separated by long or short conditions. So remember, let's decide if price crosses above the top line, that should be a long condition. And then if price crosses below the bottom line, that should be a short condition. Now again, I'm not here to give trading advice, so this might be the opposite of what you think. That's okay. Write in the comments below if you think it should be the other way around. So with that in mind, we can say the upper line, when we're interacting, when we're detecting an interaction with the top line, that should be used for long conditions, right? So up, long, and then for the lower line, that should only be considered for a short condition. And so by checking both of these boxes, we're saying, hey, long should only look at upper and short should only look at lower. That's why we've got those two columns. By doing that, what we're doing is setting the stage for either the output rules if you had a different solver that had the output window, or in the crossovers case, it's a little simpler. We just plug it in and we can see that in action. So we can say price crossing the upper line, we got long signals. But you'll notice that when price crosses below the upper line, we did not get a short signal because we've told it, hey, for the upper line, dedicate that upper line to long signals. When price crosses the upper line, above the upper line, give us a long signal. And then other way around, when price crosses below the lower line, give us a short signal and don't even consider long for the lower line. If that's all you want to do, we're good. That is a fairly common thing involving, multi-line channel type indicators like Keltner or Bollinger. But one thing some people like to add to this is they say, you know what? Okay, so here's actually a really good example. This short signal, this is, yeah, Bloodhound is telling me it crossed below, and sure, I've come to trust that it is, and every time I look, yeah, it's sure, but it's so close. What if you want to say, you know what? I want it to cross by a certain amount. I want to filter out this situation because that's just too gosh darn close. We can do that, but with a different solver. There's a different way of considering this because the crossover is fairly simple. I mean, it does have a few different options, reverse the signals, give us an output if there's no crossover, so we can give a partial and kind of see when there's no cross, things like that. But if we want more output control, we can do the same thing with the comparison solver. As you may know, the comparison solver has more capability when it comes to the output rules. So we're going to set the input A to price and input B to the Keltner channel. Okay, make sure its settings match what's on the chart. And again, we're saying interacting with the upper line should only be longs and lower line should only be shorts. So we've prepared it the exact same way. Now, if I plug that in right now, we are going to get signals, the same signals and then some, because the comparison solver is saying, give me a signal on every single bar in which the condition is met, meaning price is above the upper line or below the lower line. So we're getting that, but it's doing it on every single bar regardless, rather than just the crossover point. But now that we've set the stage, we can go into the output rules on the comparison solver and say, okay, for our, remember, this is broken up into rows. Long is this row and short is this row. They're calculated independently. So we're saying for a long, if the close is greater than the Keltner channel. Now remember, there's a little hidden detail here because it's not just the Keltner channel, it is the Keltner channel only on the plot that we picked for long. Remember, we went in there and chose only the upper line should be considered for long signals. So when we're looking at this row, we're saying if the close is greater than the upper line that we checked over there. So if it is, then give us a long signal, 1 or 100%. But we can add an additional rule and say it has to be above that upper line by at least, let's say, 1 point, right? So not touching the line, it's got to be a little bit, a minimum margin beyond that line. And then let's do the same thing for short. If it closes, if the price closes below the lower line, because that's what we chose for short, by at least minus, meaning below, minus 1 point, so it has to go down a little bit further, then give us a short signal. Now, if I hit apply, I expect this signal to disappear, or at least one of these to disappear, because it was so close. That is definitely not 1 point. So let me hit apply. Okay, so both disappeared. But we kept most of them. We just wanted to add that extra rule saying it's got to go a little bit beyond the line. Okay. So that's why I tend to use the comparison solver over the crossover, because we have a little bit more control. Now, in order to get it back to the methodology of the crossover, remember the cross detects every cross point, and the comparison solver is doing every single bar. And so what I often use is the signal blocker, because what a lot of people mean when they say signals is I want a distinct trading signal. So I don't want an output on every single bar. So let's say you get in here and get out, hit your profit target here, then you'll get in right away. And if you don't want that behavior to be the case, if you just want, hey, only on the first cross of a direction or only on the first cross for a while, you can use the signal blocker, plug it into the input node or input connection there, plug that into the result node, and we're sort of filtering the output through here saying, hey, block signals in certain circumstances. By default, we're blocking signals for 5 bars, meaning we get a signal, now don't allow another long signal for at least 5 bars. 5 bars. Now, some people like to just say, hey, only give me the first long and then wait forever until the first short, and then wait forever until the first long. Sort of kind of go back and forth, but only one per direction. That's easy to do. You just set the block signals for to a stupidly high number, like 1,000, because once it reaches that reversal, which by the way is being done through the reset rules, we're saying start blocking, but reset that block. Stop blocking for a bar once we hit an opposite signal on the input. That's this input right here. Going in here, going in there. So we get a long block for a really long time, practically forever, until a reset condition has occurred, and that's the input opposite signal. So we got long, block, opposite signal, block, long, block. Okay, so that's one way to sort of do, hey, give me a crossover that's at least a certain distance and only give me that first cross point and wait until a reversal. There's lots of ways you can do this, but that's one way I see a lot. So it's up to you if you want to use this, but that at least shows you how to use 2 plots, 1 solver.